morality, there is another crucial aspect of human nature that resurfaces in strikingly similar ways cross-culturally: our moral compass. Although it has nothing much to do with weeping statues or cube-snatching superheroes, many people nowadays connect such ideas to beliefs in higher powers. If I ask what the most important social consequences of religion are, many people will say it is that religious beliefs make us act more morally. A survey conducted by the Pew Research Center in 2007 showed that in answer to the question, do you need to believe in God to be moral, the overwhelming majority of people in countries outside Europe said yes. But surprisingly, perhaps scientists remain divided on the question. Part of the reason for this is that there are many gods and many moral systems, and it is not always clear what we mean when we refer to either religion or morality. Nevertheless, one might still ask whether morality is in some way integral to religiosity bias.
Integral.
In some way integral to religiosity bias. To our intuitive ideas about the afterlife, contagion, intelligent design, or even MCI, minimally counterintuitive properties fundamentally alter our moral behavior. Socrates posed a similar question when he asked whether goodness is loved by the gods because it is good, or whether goodness is good because it is loved by the gods. Today, some of the best answers to the question come not from Greek philosophy, but from scientific research. Studies led by my colleague Oliver Scott Curry have shown that much of human morality is rooted in a single preoccupation: cooperation. More specifically, 7 principles of cooperation are just to be morally good everywhere and form the bedrock of a universal moral compass. Those 7 principles are: help your kin, be loyal to your group, reciprocate favors, be courageous, defer to superiors, share things fairly, and respect other people's property. How about justice? Let justice be done, though the heavens fall. This new idea was quite a big deal because up until then it seemed quite reasonable to assert, as cultural relativists have always done, that there are no moral universals, and each society has therefore had to come up with its own unique moral compass. Moral compass.
Compass.
Moral compass. As I will explain, this is not the case. Moreover, the same 7 principles of cooperation on which these moral ideas are based are found in a wide range of social species and not unique to human beings. These moral intuitions evolved because of their benefits for survival and reproduction. Genetic mutations favoring cooperation behaviors in the ancestors of social species such as humans conferred reproductive advantage on the organisms adopting them, with the result that many copies of those genes survived and spread in ensuing generation. Ensue.
Ensuing.
And spread in ensuing generations. Take the principle that we should care for and avoid harm to members of our family. This moral imperative likely evolved via the mechanism of kin selection, which ensures that we behave in ways that increase the chances of our genes being passed on by endeavoring to help our close genetic relatives to stay alive and produce offspring. Loyalty to group, on the other hand, evolves in social species that do better when acting in a coordinated way rather than independently. Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Reciprocity, the idea that I will scratch your back if you scratch mine, leads to benefits that selfish action alone cannot accomplish, and deference to superiors is another way of staying alive, in this case by allocating positions of dominance or submission in a coordinated fashion rather than both parties fighting to the death. The theory of morality as cooperation proposes that these 7 principles of cooperation 7 principles of cooperation together comprise the essence of moral thinking everywhere. Ultimately, every human action that prompts a moral judgment can be directly traced to the transgression against one or more of these cooperative
Cooperation.
Cooperative principles. At least that was the theory. But how could we possibly establish that these 7 principles were indeed universal? The answer lies in an unprecedented study of human moral reasoning around the world. My colleagues and I assembled a sample of 60 societies that had been extensively studied by anthropologists and therefore provided rich data. Rich data on prevail prevailing moral norms in those cultural groups. To qualify for inclusion, each society had to have been the subject of at least 1,200 pages of descriptive data pertaining to its cultural system. It must also have been studied by at least one professionally trained anthropologist based on at least 1 year of immersive fieldwork utilizing the working knowledge of the language used locally. The sample societies were selected to maximize diversity and minimize the likelihood that cultural groups had adopted their moral beliefs from one another. They were drawn from 6 major world regions: Sub-Saharan Africa, Circum-Mediterranean, 环地中海啊 Circum Mediterranean Circum-Mediterranean, East Eurasia, Insular Pacific, Insular Pacific, North America and South America. The aim was to mine 400 documents describing the cultures of these 60 societies to establish whether or not the 7 principles of cooperation were judged morally good or not. Whenever they were mentioned as salient.
Salient.
Why salient? Why not salient? Salient. We found 3,460 paragraphs of text that touched upon these cooperative principles. In each case, we wanted to know whether the type of cooperation described was characterized using words such as good, ethical, moral, right, virtuous, obligatory,
Obligatory.
Obligatory.
Obligatory, dutiful, normative, or any other morally salient language. This produced 962 observed moral judgments of the 7 types of cooperative behavior. In 761 of those instances, 99.9% of all cases, the cooperative behavior was judged morally good. The only exception was on a remote island in Micronesia, where stealing openly rather than covertly from others was morally endorsed. In this unusual case, however, it seemed to be because this type of stealing involved the courageous assertion of social dominance. So, even though this one instance seemed to contradict the rule that you should respect other people's property, it did so by prioritizing the alternative cooperative principle of bravery. The main take home here is that the 7 cooperative principles appear to be judged morally good everywhere. Does this necessarily have anything to do with religiosity, though? No. Does this necessarily have anything to do with religiosity, though? After all, there is no obvious reason to think we must have guts to believe in the 7 moral principles. We must have guts to believe. To think we must have guts to believe. in the 7 moral principles. However, since so many people in the world seem to think there is a link between being religious and being good, this question clearly deserved close attention. The answer turned out to be a little complicated. One element of the universal moral repertoire, repertoire 字
Repertoire. Repertoire.
repertoire does seem to be intuitively connected with our religious instincts. One that takes us back to the early developing expectations that natural agents will be socially dominant. In the preceding section, I described our research with babies, showing that even before they could talk, they expected agents with supernatural powers to win out in a power struggle with an agent lacking such powers. This suggests that our relationship with the spirit world is underwritten by a moral concern with deference to authority. The gods and ancestors will tend to be our masters, and we will tend to be their servants. We will bow down to them and not they to us. But what about the other moral domains? Could they also be linked to our religious beliefs and behaviors? Are our religious intuitions, for example, relating to supernatural beings and forces, life after death, or intelligent design in nature, linked to the 7 moral rules we have also found to be universal? The answer is yes, but in ways that are altogether less natural and intuitive. That is, the link between most of the features of intuitive religiosity and the universal moral repertoire is not itself natural, but a product of the way religions as cultural systems have evolved as part of our unnatural history of civilization. That is, the link between most of the features of intuitive religiosity and the universal moral repertoire is not itself natural, but a product of the way religions as cultural systems have evolved as part of our unnatural history of civilization. Unnatural history of civilization. Natural history. Unnatural history. As such, the links between intuitive morality and intuitive religion have changed dramatically over the course of human history. For example, as we will discover later. In later chapters of this book, our natural moral imperative to care for kin has been developed in many of the world's religions into an obligation to take care of our ancestors by dutifully carrying out a variety of behavior expressing filial piety. The moral rule that we should reciprocate favors also features prominently in the logic of our interaction, in the logic of our interaction with the spirit world, and took a dark turning during the phase of religious history when human sacrifice became rampant. The moral rule that we should reciprocate favors also features prominently in the logic of our interactions with the spirit world, and took a dark turning during the phase of religious history when human sacrifice became rampant. Much later still, the history of religions, we observe the emergence of beliefs in gods demanding that humans everywhere obey law-like commandments. Although both religion and morality are rooted in human nature. Our intuitions about the two are not necessarily linked. Sometimes our moral reasoning seeps into our religious beliefs. At other times, it does no such thing. It depends on the cultural tradition you happen to live in. And so, as we have at least provisional answer to the question, do we need religions to be moral? The answer is no. Our intuitive religious beliefs, as well as the many catchy, minimally counterintuitive concepts that people adopt, minimally counterintuitive concept that people adopt, will seem to have no necessary connection to our moral intuitions, barring perhaps the special case of difference to supernatural beings. It seems that we can answer Socrates at last. Goodness is not good because it is loved by the gods. Rather, it is good whether or not the gods know or care. Unfortunately, this also suggests that most of the people surveyed by Pew on this topic have been misled, however unintentionally, by the religious leaders of the world, of the world. My wife and I have a narrowboat on the river Thames.
Thames.
Thames. On the river Thames.
Thames.
On the river Thames, moored deep into the Oxfordshire countryside. I've long loved to photograph the wildlife from the window of our floating hide. I have witnessed many beautiful scenes over the years, from the arrival of summer migrants at dawn to the lightning strike of kingfishers and the ghostly glide of the barn owl on a misty autumn evening. But of all the beautiful creatures of the river, there was one iconic species that had always eluded my telephoto lens: the Eurasian otter. Mr. Otter. I would frequently ask luck keepers for news of otter visitations. Luck keepers. What is a luck keepers? Luck keepers for news of otter visitation. Of otter visit and visitation. What's the difference? Between visit. And then take up position at the location they consider most likely to produce a sighting, but to no avail. After one particularly disappointing evening of sitting on the edge of a weir as darkness fell, a weir.
Weir.
On the edge of a weir, as darkness fell, I made the track back upstream to our boat and passed a fitful night, dreaming of otters. Past a fitful night, dreaming of otters. I awoke with a start about 5 a.m. I could not say what caused it, but for some reason I crept out of bed and opened the hatch on the side of a boat. Staring up at me from the river was a pair of milky eyes set into a spiky head of fur, literally just an arm's reach away. The otter dived under the boat and emerged with the fish. Then it was off again, swimming towards the stern. A stern. What is a stern? The back part of the ship. I crept out onto the deck with my camera, which laid on the worktop in the cabin. Within seconds I was getting close-up pictures of the otter posing for me in the early morning mist. So, I mentioned this in the chapter about religion. The answer lies in the way I reacted to this piece of good fortune. I found myself wondering why I had awoken with a start, and having awoken, why did I decide to open the hatch and look out? And why at that very particular moment? Had it been a minute earlier or later, there would have been nothing to see. Why was the camera set up and ready to shoot? Normally, I would have removed my telephoto lens and packed everything away after the failed trip the previous evening. All these coincidences seemed pregnant with meaning. Okay. British usage. Pregnant with meaning. Pregnant with meaning. People in some cultural groups might say that a spirit had summoned me from my slumber, and there might be a plethora.
Plethora.
There's a plethora of books about the royal family. The plethora of regulations, both contradictory and confusing. Might be a plethora of culturally distinctive glosses on the meaning of this. Glosses. Oh my gosh. Footnote to provide an explanation for a word or phrase. Glosses, okay. There might be a plethora of culturally distinctive glosses on the meaning of this. Perhaps some ancestor, or maybe the spirit of the river, wanted to communicate with me. Because I had been raised in a broadly Christian culture, there was perhaps some vague but lurking intuition that God had taken pity on me for all my failed efforts to see otters in the past and decided to reward me with one. At any rate, I felt an inexpressible sense of gratitude, but with no clear idea whom to thank. God, the ancestors, or perhaps the legendary Father Thames. These half-formed intuitions rattled around in the back of my mind, even if I shrugged them off as they broke through into fully conscious awareness. What this intuitive, partially implicit, and admittedly incoherent thought revealed is a set of intuitions about supernatural agency and moral reasoning. Basic ingredients of religion in the wild. The mystery was not that there was an otter in the river, but that I happened to be in the right place at the right time, with the camera set up to take pictures. This seemed to require an explanation, and my immediate thoughts appealed to the disembodied agencies. Disembodied agency, a supernatural agent which should be acknowledged and thanked. A similar reaction is evident on the face of every professional footballer whose face turned to the heavens in thanks after taking a successful penalty kick. Okay. The same logic is invoked, of course, when things go wrong. The famous anthropologist Sir Edward Evans Pritchard observed that the Azand of South Sudan attribute all misfortune South Sudan. Siege of Khartoum. Attribute all misfortune, including virtually every human death, to witchcraft. Even what happens to be an accident is typically explained in these supernatural terms. For example, if people are sitting in the shade of granary and it collapses, causing their untimely death, everyone will blame it on witchcraft. A granary. A granary. A granary.
Granary.
Granary. Granary. Granary.
Granary.
Granary. Okay. Granary, and it collapses, causing their untimely deaths. Everyone will blame it on witchcraft. This does not contradict perfectly natural explanation for the tragedy. As Evans Pritchard was quick to point out, the Azans are the first to admit that the granary supports were weakened by the termite infestation. And this is why the structure gave away. But why did it happen to fall on the precise moment that people were seated in its shade, resorting in their depths? For that, the Azans say, the only possible explanation is witchcraft. Although different cultural groups entertain wide variety of supernatural explanations for both good and bad fortune, we are alike in spontaneously seeking something more than just a door and prosaic. 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 Explanation for events that matter to us. Okay. My experience with the other made me reflect on quite how deep-rooted our tendency towards religion is. As we have seen in this chapter, there are a plethora of implicit beliefs underlying religion everywhere, deriving from pan-human intuitions about mind-body dualism, essentialism, promiscuous teleology, promiscuous sex. Okay? Promiscuous. And such like, as well as concepts that violate core knowledge in attention-grabbing ways. Anthropologists have described the belief clusters that draw on these pan-human intuitive foundations as wild religion, because they spread naturally without any need for special cultivation or intuitional support. The study of wild religion was led to new sights into why humans defer to religious authorities, such as evidence that even preverbal infants expect those who channel supernatural powers by defying principles or intuitive physics to be socially dominant. And we feel a natural sense of obligation to others rooted in universal moral intuitions concerning family, loyalty, reciprocity, courage, deference, reciprocity.
Difference.
Difference. Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Okay. Courage. Difference, fairness, and ownership. Together, the biases described in this chapter are key to understanding why people around the world tend to subscribe to unfalsifiable and seemingly improbable systems of belief, and also why they cooperate. But there's another aspect to human nature that often gets tangled up with religion, just as with a wide range of other types of human belief systems. It is an aspect that is responsible for some of our most impressive collaborative achievements, but also our cruelest forms of oppression and intergroup violence. Tribalism.
Tribalism.
Tribalism.